Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. We have a Quant QNT video for you guys today. Some really interesting developments in the last 24 hours in terms of an announcement of a significant solution through the Overledger platform called Authorise. Now, first and foremost, before we go into this bit more detail, don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel. Of course, smash that subscribe button if you have not done so already. Enough of that nonsense. Let's go straight into this one, guys. It's absolutely huge. So, of course, the CBOS event was most recently in the last few weeks, and everyone was very much focused on the fact that Quant were very quiet at this event, unlike perhaps last year, albeit that was a bit weird in places as well, to be honest, in terms of the presentation of information. But we go beyond that. Events are very loud, so why not do it in a car park? It's a bit quieter. Anyway. So that aside, the conversation around in the narrative of social media, etc., which I don't really pay too much attention to. I only really look at it just to see what the gauge of information is and what people are feeling and not feeling. And yeah, there was a bit of hysteria around that. And the video that we did 2 weeks ago, which is this one here, where we say, am I worried? My answer to that was, no, I'm not. Just because you attend events doesn't always mean you have to constantly have announcements and things. And bear in mind that the huge announcements of last year and the development over the last 12 months, particularly around the Overledger system as well, is enough for me to really focus on the fact that these guys are doing everything possible in the background. And ultimately, sometimes being quiet is the best thing possible, especially when you know what's going on. And I've met some of these guys at the recent Digital Pound Foundation events that I've been going to in London, here in the United Kingdom. And I can safely say, just from those conversations, of the sheer magnitude of what these guys are capable of and what they are doing. So in conjunction with this, this came out literally 2 days ago. This is LinkedIn, Gilbert's LinkedIn profile. Banks and financial institutions have been relying on secure key management systems for years to safeguard their data and transactions. However, with the emergence of digital assets and blockchains, these traditional systems are no longer compatible or adequate in ensuring the security of blockchain keys and digital asset custody. Now, on top of this, and I'll just reiterate this quick point before we go into the rest of this, we talked about the RTGS many times over the last couple of years, and with some defined dates, particularly around November 2025, where this whole system around the world will be integrated with the use of ISO 222 for messaging compliance as well. But in amongst all of this, just to reiterate this kind of quick point here, just in the UK, the RTGS system settling over £720 billion on an average day. This is a phenomenal amount of money. And of course, it relates to things like chaps and backs payments, all these kind of things. However, with the engine switch on of the RTGS system next year in 2024, leading up to that 2025 worldwide dominance, we have to still tick some boxes. I say we, I'm not doing anything, but the platforms, the API integrations, the Overledger systems, etc., that are in play and talked about are very much in this fruition period right now of making sure that our future of banking works within the remits of blockchain framework and the abilities of blockchain in terms of processing, validating the transactions per second, anything and everything you can possibly think of, revolving around back to the fact that blockchain is definitely the future of how finance will be powered, along with IoT and AI, of course. But the final point here from Gilbert before we go into the actual article: we've changed this with Authorize. Our technology empowers banks and institutions to enhance the capabilities of their existing key management systems to integrate and include digital assets and blockchains. I'll just bear these couple words in mind in a second. This provides central bank grade key management and enterprise transactions signing capabilities to the blockchain ecosystem. So of course, the project Roslyn, which has been absolutely phenomenal in terms of piloting and the integrations of the frameworks for CBDC systems, not just here in the UK, but of course worldwide as well. This orientation around digital assets and blockchain is a very important topic. Of course, here in the UK, in terms of digital assets, crypto assets, stablecoins, CBDCs, etc., these regulations and laws have very much come into fruition in the last few months through royal assent as well, so passed into law capability as well. And this is absolutely huge. And it's so, I wouldn't say coincidental. This has been in the block path for a long time. It's just coincidental in my mind that all these things have come out now. The electronic trade agreements and things like this, the digital asset capabilities, tokenization of assets, physical assets into digital format, utilizing that kind of NFT protocol narrative. And now we're talking about financial institutional level here, with phenomenals of trillions upon trillions of dollars going in and out every day, being powered by blockchain, and having that ability, as they've said, with the key management systems that Quant are now delivering through this Authorise platform. So really quickly, just a bit of a brief overview here about Overledger's Authorize. So apparently solves the problem of how banks and institutions can manage and integrate digital assets and blockchain private keys with their existing enterprise key management systems, enabling end-to-end authorization of transactions seamlessly across existing systems and blockchains. Authorize has recently been stress tested and proven to work in Project Rosalind, flagship central bank digital currency or cbdc experiment led by the Bank of England and the Bank for International Settlements with banks, i.e. the BIS, institutions and industry participants. We're now making the technology more widely available. It's very exciting, guys, because we know Quant was doing a lot with the Bank of England. I've met all of those guys at the events. It was really cool to see them all under one roof, as it were. But the orientation around Quant has always been about interoperability and really cohesive manner around cross-border payments and the integration of banks worldwide. This is why the Project Rosalind, Icebreaker, Jura, Helvetia, all of these project pilot systems exist, because they need all the banks to talk to each other. And all of these different banks, guys, have different remittance systems, different API frameworks, different frameworks in general for the messaging services of finance. I'm not talking about messaging like text messages or anything like that. It's just actual, I think they call it XML. I can't remember if it's XLM or XML. I know one of them's a spreadsheet and one of them's not. But it's that orientation of that ledger process, transaction process, and confirming, validating, and then therefore processing that transaction to actually become reality, or the finality of it, in a quicker time. So at the moment, sometimes cross-border payments and things can show in your bank account, but it may not actually take maybe 3, 5, sometimes 7 days, sometimes even longer to actually process and confirm that as a secure, finalized transaction. Whereas with blockchain, we can do this significantly quicker, arguably in seconds or minutes, which could boost the economy significantly. If you think about debtors and creditors and all these things being paid quicker or in time with smart contracts, etc., it can really define a massive economic growth pattern, but also just speed up so many different processes anyway, and ultimately cost cutting. This is why it's all really important to understand the pieces of the puzzle here. And just quick orientation. I know we want to go into the chart in a second, but I really want to hammer home some extra bits here, because it's labeled absolutely brilliantly in this article. Banks traditionally use key management systems that are unsuitable for blockchain, and connecting these systems to blockchain would be a huge task. Authorize addresses this issue by integrating with existing enterprise key management systems and seamlessly managing the signing of blockchain transactions and key generation. When a business application or workflow initiates or signs a transaction, Authorize coordinates the necessary authentication, authorization, and verifications with existing key management systems to securely deliver the transaction to the destination blockchain. This relieves banks from the risk of storing keys on an employee's laptop and the burdensome task of configuring and handling transactions signing for each network. So again, back to that point of ease, reduction in cost and resource, and more enhancement on privacy and security and validation of everything. And these are all critical points. Especially when you're looking at cryptographic keys or cryptography in general being integrated with a system that's been around for many, many decades, guys. And in order for it to work, these need to have frameworks and bridging systems, which ultimately Quant is here to do. So you can imagine the amounts of money going through this, the amount of different banks and institutions around the world, and Overledger, Authorize, and all the other Overledger application and Quant in general has all the answers and solutions pretty much to every problem that is in the financial industry in general. So it's a really exciting time, and definitely really exciting developments within the system of Quant Network as a project, as a technology partner within all these institutions and bank levels, for sure. And really exciting to see further development on this as well. So when we go back to that video a couple of weeks ago when we talked about Quant Acquire at the event, Am I worried? No. And this is a perfect example of why I am not, which is a really exciting time for us as holders and to see technological development in the financial industry in general. I think it's really interesting and exciting time for sure. But on that point, many always argue, like, well, if this is so big, if Quant's so big, why is the price so low still? And actually, I welcome this significantly because I love to buy Quant at sub $100 prices. I was buying a lot of Quant back in June last year at this sort of $44 to $50 mark, which is an absolute steal when you look at how high it went back up to in 2022 October, hitting highs of 220, 230, and now we traced all the way back to 85. And if you remember in previous videos, we drew all these wonderful circles, and there's reasons behind this. So if you're new to the channel or new to these charts and you haven't seen these before, I'll explain a bit briefly now what these are. So these are areas of interest to me in terms of my buy orders. So I am manually purchasing at the moment. I did have limit orders originally at this sort of $87 mark. Now I'm doing manual purchases, and I'm still got limit orders around this $67 to $65 mark as well. Reasons being for these two particular areas, guys, is historic data in the charts. So we look at the trading mechanism or a significant support or resistance line. We have to look back in history. We can't just look at all the short-term data. Unless, of course, you're a short-term trader, there's absolutely plenty of opportunity on a daily basis to make money on this, of course. This is not financial advice, but just my opinion. And for me personally, just though I'm clear, I'm a long-term holder of Quant. I'm not selling Quant until I see way over $500 marks and into the thousands, which I do believe that it will get to in the next bull run for sure, in my opinion. But yes, this market here, if we look back in the history, when we had this big bull market in 2021, if you remember that whole ethos around NFTs and things, and the whole market was going up anyway, it was a big bull run. We had this huge gap. Of course, eventually that was always going to come down. But what's really interesting is it rejected back here, but it gained some support back here in January 2022, but it failed the support here in May 2022. And in that time period, we've had maybe 2 or 3 instances where we come back to this orange line that I drew in ages ago, if you remember. And this is where we're playing with now. So if we look at certainly the areas of interest in the immediate present areas, we can see this Fib level here on one of the medium term, I would call this medium term Fib retracement level at 87. If this breaks, guys, if this doesn't support, we have confirmation here that actually the next levels down could potentially be around about this $81 mark and potentially testing the 77. Now, I have an argument now to say, okay, we're here. I might put some orders in at 77. In fact, I'm going to draw a wonderful extra circle here just to demonstrate that we talked about this today. So let's see if this comes in. I'm just going to put a marker here for the date as well. By the way, those in America, just to bear in mind that in the UK here, we always put the day first. I think there was a couple of people mentioning that on some of the short videos that we've done because the dates may have been the other way around and confused people. So I'll just put that as a little notification there. So these are 2 really interesting, significant areas for me personally, in my opinion, to capture some lower Quant levels. Now, absolutely, it may not come down to there, and it may just fluctuate up into a wave pattern where we start retesting the high levels of 99 and potentially 112 again. However, with the bear market and the winter market going on and all the crazy worldwide events going on still at the moment, I do anticipate in my mind, as a bit of a prediction here, that we will fail this level. Not massively, that's not always a bad word, especially if you're an accumulator of tokens. I do anticipate potentially to come back and at least retest this 77. I think we need to. There's a lack of data at this point, this price point area across the board. So I do think that we really need to, have that come in and play around with that area for a bit as well. As well as my point being about this 64, 67 mark. Again, the data points in my head suggest that we don't have full clarity on support levels at that area either. But we've got to take it step by step. Dollar cost averaging is a really good strategy for removing as much risk as possible when you are trading. The main reason I'm looking at the manual purchases at the moment as well is if you look at the bottom left, the RSI, so the relative strength index gives us a bit of an indication over a 2-week period, 1-month period, and 90 days. I think this is a good reflective period over various different levels of accumulation or monitoring purposes. So if you are a short-term trader, 14 days is pretty decent at 37. Yes, of course, we'd love it to be lower, but it gives that principle that there's more upward movement than there is a lower spectrum, unless of course we have a major crash in one particular day, like potentially like we had here. I think 17th of August we had that huge drop from $100 down to 83, a good $20 saving there. But back to the point of 28-day, and for longer terms, 38 is still a good position as well. In the grand scheme of things, whether I'm buying at $60 or $80, in fact, we should be looking at way higher numbers for the next bull run, in my opinion. I do believe, definitely in my mind, that we would get to at least the $800 to the $1,000, and especially if all the systems come into fruition and get turned on, I think it could accelerate further beyond that. A lot of people shout at me going, oh, you're crazy, it's going to be way higher, 10,000, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely, I think it could be that one day in the future for sure. But it all depends on how many companies and institutions jump in to get that QNT token to develop and progress their API infrastructures and their bridging infrastructures within the frameworks of finance. And that's why it's important to understand the tokenomic aspect of Quant, but also the utility of it. So this is what I'm looking forward to in the future, and I see the opportunity here to take advantage of these lower areas. And in fact, just as a very quick representation, because I'm not sure if we did this in the last video either, I will just quickly draw in the price range from the current price point, roughly around 86-ish, to that previous all-time high, guys, is a 398%, so about 400%. That doesn't sound too much in some people's minds, but it is, in terms of value, it's absolutely huge. But if we did take ourselves up to that sort of next benchmark of around $840, you're looking at nearly 1,000% gains. And for those that do love the numbers above 1,000, we could argue that there's a good potential around 1,200% increased gain opportunity there as well. So that's what I'm looking at. It sometimes you have to move beyond the value of it and go, oh, 85 is quite expensive. You don't have to have whole ones. You don't have to buy whole ones, obviously. It's like Satoshi's with Bitcoin, right? But it's all about the gains. Like, I don't care about the value as such. I'm more interested in the gains. And that in myself, if I could say to myself, okay, as a bare minimum, hopefully to get to that previous all-time high of 400% gain, yes please, who wouldn't want that? So other than that, guys, performance on the side here on the right hand side, very much negative across the board, like it is with most chart analysis on most assets these days in the markets that we're in, and I anticipate some of these to go even more lower in terms of negativity. It's not a bad thing, as I said, in my opinion, because I think it will bring in the lower price points that I really would love, selfishly, sorry. But yes, it's an indicator of where we are right now. It is squeezing a bit. We've lost those like 60 to 90% reductions now over that 12-month or so period. We're now entering that sort of stability area. What's the confidence level looking like? Where are we trying to achieve in our next price point variables? So let's keep an eye on it. I'll do a YouTube short in the next few days if I see any real interesting information or movements on the price point of QNT token. But guys, thank you so much for joining us on this one. Again, don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel, of course, and of course as well, don't forget to like this video and smash that subscribe button. We'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye bye.